We're back on the record on case number 2317423BM. I believe we fixed the audio issues. Your next witness is Mr. Burgess. Is that correct, Ms. Schmelzer?
Yes, thank
All
you.
right. I'll let him in. Good morning, sir.
Hey, good morning. Hopefully you can still hear me.
Yes. And my name, as I introduced myself to you as I was signing you in here, is Matt Hagan. I'm the referee in this matter. You've been called as a witness by Ms. Schmelzer and her client. She'll have some questions for you. And then if she chooses to, Ms. Lentz may have some questions for you, okay?
Okay.
All right, if you'd raise your right hand, please. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you, Ms. Schmelzer.
Mr. Burgess, my name is Lori Schmelzer. I represent Kevin Kloosterman. As you might know, we are here today regarding some child matters, and Mr. Kloosterman has asked you to appear and kind of provide, the facts and knowledge and things that to provide the court with some insight. And I do have some questions for you today, and I do thank you for being here and taking the time out of your day. If we could start with, please state your name and spell it for the record.
Joe Burgess, Joeburgess.
And do you know either or both Jennifer Kloosterman and Kevin Kloosterman?
I do.
How do you know them?
Kevin is my cousin and Jen is his wife.
Do you also know their minor children, Kelvin, Kelly, Kelsey?
I do.
To your knowledge, are Jennifer and Kevin Kloosterman presently living separately?
That's what I understand.
Just so that we have a good timeline here, I'm going to direct your attention to the time before the separation, when they were living together. Could you tell me about how often did you generally interact with the parties and the children?
Very consistently, depending on the time of year, as much as 3 times a week. And I would say at the least once a week over the course of the last 15 years.
How were you interacting with them? Was it outside in public at sporting events or at their home, or how was that?
It was a combination of all.
And did you have the opportunity there to observe their home life or their routines?
Yes, but that I can't speak to what happened when we weren't there, obviously.
Absolutely, nobody's asking you that. I'm trying to lay the groundwork of when you made the observations, how often was that, things like that. That's why I'm asking these preliminary questions, so that we know the scope of your knowledge. Okay.
Okay.
So when you were there, when you were in their presence, did you have that opportunity to observe sort of, home
Yes.
life and routines? Okay. When and how did you make those observations?
I guess I don't, when and how. I mean, when we were there,
Right,
well,
but sir, we're all strangers. We weren't in the home. So we're relying on you to share that knowledge of when you were in the home. Were you in the home? Were you at sporting events? Those types of things. How were you making observations of this family and their interactions?
Visually and audibly. I'm still confused as to what you mean by how were we making these observations.
Were you at their home? What were you doing?
Usually hanging out casually. I don't know how to expound upon that.
Were you having barbecues? Were you having dinner?
Yes.
Were you playing with
Yes.
the kids? Were you voting?
Bonfires, barbecues, dinner, sharing in movies.
And this was anywhere from 1 time a week to 3 times a week?
Yeah, I would say that's fairly accurate. They've been a significant part of our life. We have spent a lot of time together, and that the events ranged vastly.
Can you give some examples of those events then?
It, boating, snowmobiling, like I said, barbecuing, bonfires.
Did you ever take vacations with the family?
We did.
Where, when, how often?
We did 2 Florida vacations. We did, I'm gonna say 13 years on Mackinac Island consecutively. Sometimes that was twice a year. So that could be, you know, I mean, that amount of time, we could double that. And that was because we did typically an adult weekend and a kids weekend.
When the kids were around, was it Mr. and Mrs. Klusterman together? Was it just one of them?
It was a combination of both. Often activities were separated. For instance, Kevin might take Kelvin golfing and Jen would take the kids shopping. But then there were also a lot of combined events, meals, biking around the island, things like that.
How about the other times, just hanging out at home or, you know, normal week to week family stuff? Was it the parents together? Was it just one parent?
Again, a combination. I think based on the circumstances, you know, parties might divide. Women may congregate and men may congregate. So often we were separated.
Who was taking care of the kids?
I would say both. But in those circumstances, the kids tend to create their own activities and, you know, tend to themselves essentially, but not without observation.
Who was checking in on the kids?
I would say both of them.
Did you ever see them do bedtime routines, putting the kids to bed?
No, I honestly did not. That was not in all the time we've been together. That's not something I've been privy to.
What about providing meals or other day-to-day routine care for the kids? Who was doing that, or did you have the opportunity to see that?
Not in its entirety. I would say, based on my experience, it would probably have to be 50-50. A lot of not homemade meals, but I have witnessed them both providing those meals, but typically through outside sources, third parties.
Meaning like restaurants carry out.
Correct.
And again, I'm just asking you what you've directly observed. I'm not asking you to tell me everything about everything that's ever happened in this family. That's kind of why I initially started asking how often you interacted with the family. So all of these questions that I'm asking are related to when you were there.
Right.
Have you observed Mr. Klusterman and the kids alone, or one of the kids? I mean, without Mrs. Klusterman there?
Yes, but primarily recently, and that's since the separation.
Well, what about during the vacations? You testified to Mr. Klusterman would take one of the kids golfing and
Yes. Okay.
on his own. Did that occur on an occasion?
Yep, it did. On vacation, we went fishing with his son, Calvin, and on Mackinac Island, we would typically golf, and that was separate from Jen.
And in those times that you were together with the family, or either with Mr. or Mrs. Klusterman, Did you have the opportunity to observe how each of them parented their children?
Yes.
Did you ever observe the children and Mr. Kloosterman to express love and affection between one another?
Yes.
How did they do that?
I mean, typically, hands-on, hugging, kind words, encouragement.
Do you ever observe Mr. Kloosterman attending sporting events for the kids?
Absolutely.
Is that often, rarely?
I can't attest to, I mean, because I'm not present at most of those events, but I know verbally, I can speak verbally that he attends whenever possible.
Do you ever attend those events?
I'm sorry?
Do you attend sporting events for the kids?
I have.
And who have you seen there with respect to Mr. or Mrs. Kloosterman?
In those instances, both of them.
Have you ever had an opportunity to observe Mr. Kloosterman discipline the children?
Yes.
How does he discipline the children in your observations?
I mean, verbally.
Does he yell, scream, get aggressive, or?
I've heard him raise his voice. I've never heard him scream at the kids.
Have you ever witnessed any sort of physical aggression or physical behavior from Mr. Kloosterman towards the children?
I have not personally.
Have you ever witnessed physical altercations between the parties, between Mr. and Mrs. Kloosterman?
I have not personally.
Have you, has there ever been any time that a concern was raised in your mind regarding either parent's ability or interactions with the children that make you worried for the children's well-being?
The lack of censorship in times of intensity has concerned me. And I'm speaking specifically about Jen. I've witnessed multiple occasions where she has let her emotions get the best of her, and it's regardless of who is around, that being any third party, but specifically the children.
What moment of intensity? Do you have an example?
The majority of our spring break in 2022.
What was happening?
In my opinion, she spent the bulk of our time trying to pick a fight with Kevin.
What was she doing?
Following him, trying to egg him on into any sort of altercation that would, lead to a resolution that she was seeking.
Have you ever had any concerns about Mr. Kloosterman's ability to take care of the children on a day-to-day basis, or see anything that said, hey, I'm worried about these kids in his care?
No.
I have no further questions, Your Honor.
Ms. Lentz, do you have any questions for this witness?
Thank you, Your Honor. Yes, just briefly. Is it Burgess? Sorry. Burgess. Mr. Burgess, is there a running joke at your house about a certain chair?
Not that I'm aware of.
So there's no joke about a certain chair being Kevin's chair because all he does is sit on his phone at the chair.
Okay. I guess, that could be a little bit more specific. Yeah, his spot is the end of our couch. I would not say that he resides there entirely. But
And the joke isn't that he's constantly on his phone there.
I would not agree with that.
Mr. Burgess, did any of the Kloosterman children spend the night at your home on July 20th?
I would not know that. I'm sorry.
You wouldn't know if the children stayed the night at your own house?
I could not attest to that date, no.
What about-
The children stay here often. I don't have specific dates, nor was I led to believe that I needed to provide dates.
How frequently would you say the children spend the night at your house since the party separation?
I would say it's probably been 5 or 6 times.
Would it be closer to once or twice a week on the defendant's parenting time weeks?
I can't accurately answer that.
Do you know why the children would be spending the night at your home during the defendant's parenting time?
Because our children are best friends and they love being together.
On Monday, July 10th, did you pick up a softball glove for Kelsey?
I did. I cannot attest to that date, but yes, I did pick up a softball glove from Jen.
And was that because the defendant was supposed to drop it off but didn't?
It ended up turning out that it was actually in his vehicle. But
Mr. Burgess, I'm sorry, I didn't ask a follow-up. You testified earlier that you can't speak to what happened when you're not there. Is that correct?
Correct.
Do you think it's possible that a lot of situations happen in private with the kids and with the parties?
Absolutely.
And you'd have no knowledge of what went on behind closed doors?
It would be impossible for me to know.
No further questions.
Ms. Schmelzer, do you have any redirect?
Yes. Sir, you mentioned that your children are close friends with the Kloosterman children. How old are your children?
8 and 11.
And how long have they known the Kloosterman children?
Since my oldest birth. There has been no separation. Their oldest was present, immediately after my firstborn's birth, and that relationship has cultivated ever since.
Prior to the party separation, were there sleepovers between your children and the Kloosterman children at either homes?
Yes.
How often would that occur?
Again,
Just in general.
maybe 5 times a year.
Have those sleepovers increased or decreased or stayed the same approximately since the party separated?
I would have to say increase, but not significantly.
Is there a difference between sleepovers during summer versus school year,
Yes.
traditionally?
Summer, absolutely.
And would you agree that the party separation, really, there was a lot of summer months in there, right?
Yes. I mean, it was exclusively summer.
Okay. And at times that the party's children, the Kloosterman children, did spend the night at your house and had a sleepover, was there also a time or times that Mr. Kloosterman was there with them overnight?
Yes.
I'm sorry?
Yes.
Yeah, I have no further questions. Thank you.
Any final questions, Ms. Lentz?
Yes, sir, and just one. Mr. Burgess, you said you have 2 children, 8 and 11. Are they both girls?
They are.
And one of the Kloosterman children is a 15-year-old boy, correct?
Yes.
How is he close friends with an 8 and 11-year-old?
Typically his time here resides around his cousin being here at the same time, who is also the same age. So during the summer months, my brother stays here with his children. And that is when Calvin is most interested in staying here because his cousin is also here.
No further questions, Your Honor.
Thank you very much, sir. You're all set.
Okay.
Your next witness, please.
Is Kevin Bruyn, I'll have to ask him how to say that, available?
I'm sure I'll have to ask as well, but that person, that name, I believe. Good morning, sir.
Good morning.
My name's Matt Hagan. I'm the referee in this matter. You've been called as a witness by Ms. Schmelzer and her client. She's going to have some questions for you. And then if she chooses to, Ms. Lentz may have some questions for you, okay?
All right.
All right, thank you. If you would raise your right hand, please. Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Ms. Schmelzer.
Thank you. Sir, my name is Lori Schmelzer. I am the attorney for Kevin Klusterman, who I understand has asked you to appear today and sort of provide us and the court with some information you might know about the Klusterman children and the parents. And so I have some questions for you, and I do thank you for your time today. Can you please start with stating your name and spelling it for the record?
Yeah, certainly. Kevin Bruyn. The last name is D as in dog, E, B as in boy, R as in Robert, U, Y, N as in Nancy.
Thank you. And Mr. Bruyn, what do you do for a living?
I am a social worker. So I own and run adaptive counseling and case management. We do outpatient behavioral health, and we contract with primary cares to do care management out of the physician's offices.
And do you know either or both Jennifer Klusterman and Kevin Klusterman?
I know them both.
How do you know them?
So I am Kevin's brother-in-law. I am married to his sister. And so I've known him for about the past 23, 24 years. And I know Jen just from since they've been married, since they started dating.
And do you know about how long ago that was that you first met Mrs. Klusterman?
Over 10 years. I don't know right offhand how long they've been married. It's got to be, let's see, their oldest kid is 15, and so it's got to be longer than that. So over 15 years.
And do you know the minor children, Kelvin, Callie, Kelsey?
I do, yes.
To your knowledge, if you know, are Jennifer and Kevin Klusterman currently living separately?
Yes, I believe they are currently separated.
Do you have any knowledge or know when that may have begun or about when?
It's I don't know specifically, but it's been for several months now that they've been separated.
And just so that we're keeping the timeline straight, I'm just going to direct your attention to the time before their separation. So when they were, living together, how often did you generally interact with the parties, the children, the family?
Yeah, we interacted on a fairly regular basis. I would say we had some level of interaction, so trying to think, because probably within the past 10 years, we had some level of interaction with them at least monthly. And oftentimes more than that, we would see them at holidays, get-togethers, birthdays, all of those kind of things.
Do you have children of your own?
I do. I have 4 children, and they're all pretty in step with Kevin and Jen's kids in terms of age, and so they've all gotten together regularly.
So are your kids and the Klusterman kids, do they interact? Are they friends? Do they?
Yes, yeah, yep.
And so, the times over the years that you were interacting with the Klusterman family, what kind of things were you guys doing together?
We would go out, both our families boat, so we'd go out and do a lot of boating. we've gone to football. I mean, more recently, so both our boys play football together. So we've gone to football games, different sporting activities like hanging out on, just like hanging out. We didn't hang out on the weekends a ton, unless, outside of holidays and birthdays and things like that.
You ever sort of, hang out at each other's houses, bonfires, sports, things like that?
Right, exactly. Yeah.
Okay. During sort of those activities, was Kevin and Jennifer Clusherman together, or was it just one of the parents with the kids?
No, they were usually together. There were times during the summer that that Jen and my wife would get together with the kids to go to the beach and things like that, because Kevin and I were both working, and so we wouldn't be at all of those, but generally for the interactions that I was involved with, usually Kevin was there as well.
And during those interactions, did you have the opportunity to observe each Jennifer Clusherman and Kevin Clusherman and how they interacted with their children?
Yes. Yep.
How would you describe those interactions?
They, I would describe them both as being good parents. They were both kind of interested in the best interests of the kids. Parenting is stressful, so it wasn't always like they had to deal with some of the typical things you have to deal with in parents, as parents, discipline, telling the kids to knock it off, things like that, and I got to see them kind of both doing that.
Was there one parent doing the majority of the parenting, or was that kind of a shared activity, in your opinion or observations?
No, it seemed like a pretty shared activity.
You mentioned that you're aware that the parties have been living separately for a few months now. Have the frequency of your interactions with the family, has that changed since the separation?
We have not seen Jen as much, but we continue to see Kevin and the kids.
What kind of things have you been doing with Kevin and the kids since their separation?
We've gone to football games have been the big one. Like I mentioned, I think I've been to I don't remember how many. I think they've had 3 or 4 home games, and I've been at 3 of those. Kevin was at all 3 of those that I attended, and so we'd see the kids at those as well.
Anything else that you were doing in the last few months with the family?
Kelsey had a birthday party this past summer, and I believe that was since they had separated, and so that was something that Kevin got together. He made arrangements for that, and he was cooking the food, taking the kids out on the boat and things like that, and all the cousins were together for that.
Over the summer, the last few months, when it was just Mr. Clusherman and the kids, did you see that he was attending to the children's needs, food, clothing, day-to-day care?
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
Supervision.
Right.
Any concerns raised in your mind at all about any of that?
No, I didn't, I haven't had any concerns. To the point that I let him take my kids. And am not concerned about their level of supervision, whether or not they'll be cared for, whether or not they'll have adequate oversight at all.
Have you ever observed Mr. Klusterman and the children sort of express love, affection, a bond back and forth?
Yeah. Yeah, regularly.
And how do they do that?
Nothing that has so just to what me is like very normal and appropriate ways. Hugs, just words of affirmation from Mr. Klusterman. He tries to acknowledge when they're doing positive things. I've seen, the other thing that I've seen him do is even when he has had to enforce discipline or kind of get after the kids, right? He pays attention and will circle back around and try and offer some affirmations for them, right? To kind of, anytime you're enforcing consequences, that can be stressful to the relationship. And I've seen him pay attention to that. He comes back with an affirmation to try and, get back on the same page.
And you've observed him having to discipline the children then, is that correct?
Yes.
Anything about the discipline or how he disciplines that caused you concern that the discipline was inappropriate or excessive or aggressive?
No.
Have you ever witnessed Mr. Klusterman be physically aggressive or use force or violence with the children?
No. I've seen him. I've seen he and him, whichever and Calvin wrestle. But that's when I've seen that it's been sometimes Calvin going after him, and so nothing inappropriate that I've witnessed.
Is that play wrestling or is that wrestling when Calvin is misbehaving?
Yeah, no, it's play wrestling.
Okay. Is there laughing at the time and
Right.
smiles?
Yeah.
Okay. So I was more concerned about if the children are misbehaving. Have you ever witnessed any sort of like violence or inappropriate disciplinary methods from Mr. Klusterman?
No.
Have you ever observed Mrs. Klusterman discipline the children?
I've seen her reprimand them, and I think that's been the extent of it.
Nothing concerning there, of course.
Mm-mm.
Did Mr. Klusterman recently reach out to you for some advice about counseling for his children?
Mr. Klusterman?
Yes, Kevin.
Yeah, I believe that. Yeah, I think I talked with both of them about whether or not where to go, things like that. In terms of available resources, it's hard to come by counselors for kids.
Right. In your line of work, do you have knowledge of like the resources available for counseling and therapy for children?
Correct.
And is it fair to say that both parents actively engaged you in that conversation?
Yes.
Did Mr. Klusterman, meaning Kevin, did he show an interest and concern and involvement in that?
Yes, he did. Yep. He was interested in getting the kids help if that was possible, and he showed concern about who they would be meeting with.
In any of your interactions with the family, the children, and Mr. and Mrs. Klusterman, did you ever see any incidents or times where either the children or Mrs. Klusterman appeared fearful of Mr. Klusterman?
No.
I have no further questions.
Any questions for this witness, Ms. Lentz? You're on mute.
Thank you. Just briefly, Your Honor, I apologize, Mr. DeBryan. I'm
Correct.
trying not to butcher your name. You kind of hesitated for a second when you were just asked who contacted you about counseling. Is that because it was actually Jennifer that contacted you about getting the kids into counseling?
I was just thinking back, I spoke with both of them. So yeah, Jen had contacted me as well. I think she had, I don't remember at this point who contacted me first.
And would it be fair to say that Jennifer has reached out to you several times over the party's marriage for advice, resources?
Yes, she's, there's been a handful of times where she's asked me some questions, and yeah.
Mr. DeBryan, you mentioned a birthday party that the defendant planned. Isn't it true that's the only birthday party he's ever planned?
I couldn't speak to that. I don't know his exact involvement in other birthday parties.
Mr. DeBryan, you mentioned 3 football games that you attended. Did you sit on the home side of the field or the visitor side of the field?
We sat on the visitor side.
And is that because Miss Klusterman was sat on the home side and the family was trying to avoid her?
At the time, there was some uncertainty, and my understanding was Mr. Klusterman was trying to be very conscientious about not violating a no contact order.
And Mr. DeBryan, do you think what a person does in public versus what a public person does in private, what do you think is more reflective of their true character?
Oh, that's a very philosophical question.
I know we're getting deep this morning.
I would say both are just different reflections of one's character.
I have no further questions for you, Mr. DeBryan.
Thanks.
Any redirect, Ms. Schmelzer?
Just one moment. With respect to the question recently about getting the kids into the counseling, is it your testimony that both parents were involved in reaching out to you for resources or inquiring with you about advice for resources?
Yes, correct.
With respect to the 3 football games that you attended, you did see Mr. Klusterman there, is that correct?
Yes.
All 3 of them?
Yes, correct.
And that was recently, is that fair to say?
Yes, this season.
This season. Have there been other games that you've attended just really throughout the course of the children ever since their birth that you attended where the children played?
Yes, yes. Between the 2 of us, 7 kids, we've been to all kinds of games and things like that.
And did you see Mr. Klusterman at those events for his children?
Yes, I've seen him at various events throughout the years.
And sort of this very philosophical question was asked of you, what a person does in public versus private, which is their reflective of their true character. Was your answer really hypothetical?
So my answer, right, that it reflects different parts of our character, I think is, is that hypothetical? I think it's philosophical, right? That's part of my job is helping people identify, get more familiar with their self, and to separate, right, our actions from our intentions is part of that process. Who we are is part of what we do and part of what we want to do.
If I could turn your attention specifically to the Klusterman family, that's who we're talking about here. We're not here to discuss philosophy and hypotheticals. Your testimony today about the family, about Mrs. Klusterman, Mr. Klusterman, and the children, is that from your firsthand observations?
Yes, correct.
And do you have any reason to believe that those firsthand observations of what you saw and experienced were false?
No, I do not.
I have no further questions.
Any final questions for this witness, Ms. Lentz?
Just one, Your Honor. Mr. Bruyn, are you with the parties 24 hours, 7 days a week?
I am with no one that frequently.
No further questions.
Thank you very much, sir. You're all set.
Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready for cross? There's no one else in the waiting room.
Those were all of my lay witnesses. I still have my own client as a witness. So I do appreciate the court and Counsel Lentz permitting those witnesses to be called out of order, just to kind of let them get on with their day. But yes, those are all my lay witnesses. The only witnesses I have left is my client.
That's not what I asked. Are we having cross-examination of the plaintiff at this time or not?
I do have cross-examination of the plaintiff. Are we wanting to do that
Let's get
now? I can do that.
All right, Ms. Kosterman, please raise your right hand.
Oh, yeah,
Do you swear from the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
absolutely.
Thank you.
Ms. Klusterman, during your testimony, you indicated that it was not true that you kicked Mr. Klusterman out of the house. And you stated that you did ask him to leave, but never prevented him from coming back. Is that true?
That is true.
And yet, on April 23rd, you sent him a text message that said, quote, "You're not moving home." Is that correct?
Yes,
So you did kick him out of the house and he wasn't free to come back to the home.
I believe it was a discussion back and forth between us. And we had both agreed that it was not in our children's best interest or our own for him to be moving back at that time.
But you said to him, "You're not moving home." That was your directive, correct?
Yes,
And in June, when he did move back into the home temporarily after the court had denied your request for exclusive use of the home, you told him to come in and out of the garage only, correct?
I honestly don't remember. That's possible. I don't remember if I said he could only come in and out of the garage.
You got mad at him when he came into the home through another door, correct?
Yes, I did.
And that's because you have an app on your phone where you can see who's coming in and out of the garage.
Yes, I do, as most people do.
Who's most people? Because I don't.
All right.
You wanted to monitor when Mr. Klusterman was coming in and out of his own home. Is that fair to say? That's what you wanted.
No,
So why did you direct him to come in and out of the garage only and get mad at him when he didn't do what you told him to do?
the times that I asked him to come in and out of the garage were usually between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. when I am in charge of the safety of our children. I like to know who is coming in and out of our house during the evening hours. Yes.
What makes you in charge of the safety of your children and not him?
Well, when he's not home, I am default as the person in charge of the safety of our children.
And when you're not home, he's the default who's in charge of the safety of your children. Is that correct?
If he's not there, how can he be in charge of the safety of our children?
So over the course of your 15 years of child rearing, he was never alone with the children. Is that what you're saying? And in charge of their safety?
That's not what I'm saying.
In 15 years of child rearing together, did you always direct him to come in and out of the home in a manner that you could see he was coming in and out of the home?
Nope, this was just recently, like you said earlier, changing the event of the timeline. This was since our separation and he was back in the home. I thought it was very appropriate for me to know when he comes in and out of the house, when it's between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m. when we are all sleeping.
He never monitored when you came in and out of the house.
I was in the house between the hours of midnight and 6 a.m.
For all the hours, the 24 hours, he never monitored when you came and went into the home, correct?
Correct.
But you monitored him.
During the hours of midnight and 6 a.m.
And that's because you didn't really want him there, did you?
That's speculation, ma'am.
It's not speculation. I'm asking you a question. You didn't really want him there, did you?
I didn't care if he was there. I just wanted to know for the safety of my kids, if and when he came into the house.
So for 15 years of child rearing, you never had a concern about the safety of your children and with respect to him coming in and out of the house, but all of a sudden you did.
Post separation, post divorce filing, absolutely.
Isn't it true that you just wanted to control his movements?
That is not true.
Ma'am, isn't it true that between April 19th and May 15th, April 19th through May 15th of 2023, you sent over 40 requests to Mr. Klusterman demanding that he give you access to his Verizon account, correct?
That number seems excessive, but yes, that was one of the requests I had made had we were going to try to make our marriage work.
And the purpose of that is you wanted to see text messages that he sent to somebody.
Text messages, phone calls, yes.
And you said if he gave that to you, you would resume your marriage.
That was one of the three things since April 14 that I said I needed in order to continue a marriage with him, if that was what we decided to do.
In fact, you sent him a text message in that time period that said, if you don't give this to me, I'm filing for divorce, correct?
That was our stipulation, that I said I would need three things, and those three things have remained the same since April 14. One of them was access to our phone records that I had no longer had, correct?
You never had access to his text messages between him and other people, did you?
That is not true.
So when did that change?
Probably November, October of 2021.
So you read his text messages prior to that?
I did not read them, but I had access to our Verizon account.
Your Verizon account doesn't keep content.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to this line of questioning as relevance. I'm not sure what access to the Verizon password has to do with any of the child-related matters.
Your Honor, this goes towards motivation and credibility, because her testimony in the last day has been inconsistent with statements that were made during this time period. And the court is charged with determining the credibility of witnesses.
What inconsistencies are you talking about? That would
Well, I'm sorry.
What inconsistencies are you talking about that would relate to this issue?
Yeah, the inconsistencies of her testimony related to all the things that she's been experiencing for 7-8 years, that she just brought up yesterday. Some of them weren't even in her trial brief or in prior pleadings, are not consistent with her statements and ongoing conduct in April and May of 2023. And I'm exploring that issue.
And Your Honor, I would say that it is consistent. Yesterday, my client tried to testify about an inappropriate relationship and that was shot down. The questioning about the Verizon passwords and wanting to see text messages is consistent with the inappropriate relationship my client previously talked about. And again, I don't think it's relevant to the child related.
However, it's relevant to her credibility and her motivation.
I don't know why this is relevant. I mean, I'm obviously taking notes, but now there's an objection. I don't know why this is relevant. I don't know how it would weigh at all on the court determining any child-related issue. I guess sometimes at the court, you have to sit and wait and see if things develop in terms of whether they're relevant, and I haven't seen it yet, and I haven't heard that from the argument, I guess. So I don't know why we need any more information in this vein.
I'm not entirely clear because I have other text messages I'd like to question her about. Are you preventing me from doing that, or?
No. I didn't even, there's zero, no, I didn't say anything that broad. I don't know why why we're going into the access to the passwords and the records. You're saying it's credibility. I don't think that applies. We just disagree, and we're going to move on. But in terms of text, of course you can ask about text.
Sure, Your Honor.
So we're all set to move on. Thank you.
Thank you. Ma'am, in this same time period, April 20th, you repeatedly texted Mr. Klusterman, I won't keep them from you. They love us both. I want what is best for them. And that is seeing both of us. And that's with respect to your children. That's what you said in April of 2023, correct?
Absolutely.
And then the very next day you said, I don't even have to let the kids go with you. Is that true?
If it's in a text, I said it. I'm sure it was part of a discussion that is taken. You'd have to read before and after how the context of that read.
You stated in quotes, I don't even have to let the kids go with you. Is that a text message you sent to Mr. Klusterman on April 21st of 2023?
Yeah,
And that's because you believe that you're in control of these children and he has no rights?
that is not true at all.
Well, why would you say that then?
I would like to see the rest of the text around that so that it can be taken in context.
You have access to your text messages. I'm asking why you said, I don't even have to let the kids go with you.
Would you like me to look at the context of the conversation?
I would like you to answer why you felt that you had the right to dictate to Mr. Klusterman when he could or could not see his own children that were produced of the marriage together.
Your Honor, I'm going to object to asked and answered and argumentative. My client said she can't provide an answer without seeing the context of the rest of the message.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the answer.
She answered it twice now.
No, that's what I said. The answer is we have to deal with the answer. The answer is she has to see the rest of the text.
And ma'am, you later then said, I would never do that. And you're in my heart. You know that. Nothing you have done is bad enough to where we can't work through this. Is that correct?
Yeah,
And that was in reference to you wishing to reconcile the marriage at that point?
at that point, absolutely.
Ma'am, during your testimony yesterday, and I'm going to summarize here, but you alleged that Mr. Klusterman shouldn't have primary or joint custody of these children because he abuses them physically and mentally and emotionally. Is that fair to characterize your testimony?
Yes,
You think he's a danger to his own children?
I think there's situations, absolutely.
Yet, on April 30th, in discussing an event that you both attended or would attend, you stated to him, you can sit with us, but the kids will be between us right now. You made that statement to him on April 30th of 2023, correct?
I'm sure I did. If it's in the text message you're looking at, absolutely.
But yesterday, your position is he's a danger to your children.
I think what you're asking to, if it was at a public event, I'm not afraid of the safety of my children at a public event or around other people. And if I was sitting in him, I'm sure that was an added public event.
So you're going to put your children in between you and him, this horrible, abusive parent that you've testified has been abusing these children for years.
I think my stance has pretty much been the same, that different things happen differently in public and private. And this was a public event. I have never been concerned for my children around Kevin in public. He's a great dad. And there is times in public that he's a great dad. My concern, as I stated yesterday, is when we are alone and behind closed doors. What happens behind closed doors is what I'm concerned about. And that's why I'm asking for the safety, emotionally and physically, more so emotionally as of recently, for my children, our children, who deserve the best life that we can both give them.
But on that same day, April 30th of 2023, you specifically invited Mr. Kloosterman to come to the home in private, didn't you?
April, yeah, probably.
You said if you really loved me, you would want to be here, correct?
Correct. That sounds like something I have said multiple times to him in our marriage.
So you invited him to be with you privately in April of 2023.
I don't think I don't know what you mean privately, like in our home.
Not in public. You just got done saying in public you felt perfectly safe, but not in private.
I think at that point we were still trying to reconcile. Absolutely.
So you felt safe inviting him to your private home?
Yes, I did.
And you responded to him after he came over by saying, "Thank you for coming over tonight. I'm going to bed. I love you."
Yeah, that sounds something very typical, I would say, to my husband of 17 years.
A couple days later, May 2nd, you sent him a text that said, "I'd rather do something the five of us." You were referring to you, Mr. Kloosterman, and your three children.
I'm sure I was.
You wanted to spend time together.
Absolutely, as a family.
And that was an invitation to him.
Yep.
You testified quite a bit that you felt threatened or coerced by Mr. Kloosterman in your relationship, in your private relationship. Is that fair to say that's what you testified to yesterday?
Yes.
And you didn't like that he would ask you for certain things that a husband and a wife might do together.
I think the husband and wife do share very intimate things. Absolutely.
And at times in your relationship, you openly shared those things. You were very consensual and participatory and desirous of your relationship with Mr. Kloosterman, right?
No, yes, with my husband, absolutely. The pressure to do other things has definitely played a huge factor in our marriage. And this is why I'm uncomfortable. If we want to wrap this back around to our children, which is why we're here today, I think the pattern of behavior that I have seen in this marriage and the pressure that I have been put under by my husband is why we're here today. I want this to come back to the safety of our children and the safety of my girls.
And I'm asking you, it's true that you were a willing participant and consensual throughout your marriage and having a marital relationship, an intimate relationship with your spouse, correct?
With my spouse, absolutely.
And even after you guys were separated on May 9th, you were sending him selfies of yourself, meaning pictures you took of yourself, correct?
I would like to see the selfie. I believe there were no sexual selfies sent after April 14.
I didn't say sexual. I said you were sharing pictures you took of yourself with your husband voluntarily.
Yes, he's my husband. My guess is one of our children were also involved in the picture many times.
On May 9th, you said, here is a selfie. Here is the selfie you asked for. That was 100% voluntary on your part, wasn't it?
Well, not voluntarily, but he asked for it. But when he asked for a picture, he was not wanting one of my face.
Did he say, I want a selfie, or did he say he wanted something else?
He said, I want a selfie. This is my husband. I know what he means by that.
You're speculating what he meant. What he actually said was a selfie, and you responded saying, here's a selfie. You voluntarily provided that. That was consensual, correct?
Yes, I did.
On May 11th, you offered to shave him. Was that an intimate shave?
I'd like to see the context of May 11. There's been multiple times that I have given my husband haircuts or shaves, as he calls them, in the past. Absolutely.
So whether it was intimate or not, you were willing and voluntary and consensual in that endeavor. You offered.
I don't think I offered. It's usually, and you could ask him, he's sitting right by you, but I would never voluntarily offer to shave him. It was not my favorite activity. But yes, there were times that I would shave him. He was my husband.
1 second here. You said on May 11th at 12:07 p.m., if you're okay with that, I can shave you.
Yeah, well, I would like to know the context prior to that message.
I'm just asking, you sent that message, didn't you?
Clearly I did. I'm sure it was in response to something.
And then you responded, you're going to make her be naked, and she offered to do your private area?
Oh, yes, I can attest to that. I had told him I wasn't going to shave him. And so he told me he was going to ask Gracie to shave him. And when I shave him, I am required to be naked or very minimally clothed. And so I was saying, is that what you're going to require of Gracie also when she shaves you?
And Your Honor, I'm going to interject again. We're talking a lot about someone getting a haircut or doing other things. I'm not sure the relevance to the children in this regard.
I tried to raise the relevance issue.
You specifically opened this door. I mean, your whole point was that it wasn't consensual, and Ms. Schmeltz was trying to show that it was. So this is your own doing.
Understood, Your Honor.
I mean, I don't, unless you want to respond further, Ms. Schmeltz, that's my ruling on it.
Thank you. Ma'am, there was no in-between text. If you're okay with that, I can shave you. And your very next text was, you going to make her naked, and she offered to do your private area, correct?
Yeah. I don't think those are the same conversations, but.
Ma'am, would you like to see it? Because they are.
No, but I'm saying when you text people, sometimes there's multiple conversations that you're talking about, but yeah, I offered to shave him. He's my husband.
Okay. And your testimony is that in the past, you felt threatened and coerced to conduct yourself during those shaving sessions in a manner you didn't like, and yet you're separated. It's May 9th, and you're volunteering to do that.
I said that I would after he asked me to. He's still my husband. His behavior has been escalating.
Thank you. You've answered the question.
You're welcome.
On June 29th, you sent a text message that said, I will always encourage a healthy relationship between you and our kids. Last night, you said you wanted 50-50. That means supporting each other. You sent that text, correct?
Yep.
On May 14th, you sent him a text that said, I will never stop loving you. And we have the most amazing kids and they need us both strong and happy, correct?
Absolutely.
And May 21st, you stated, and this is 2023, my hope is we can do things fairly and even all together for Cherry Festival. So that is the best week for the kids. Is that correct?
Absolutely. What day was that text, just so I can remember?
May 21st of 2023. You agree you sent that text?
Yeah, I did.
May 24th, you sent him a text, May 24th, 2023, in reference to some photos that you shared sailing on the tall ships on the bay. You stated to him, you could have come too. Is that correct?
Yeah,
And this is, and I'm sorry,
that was
June
a
23rd, 2023, you sent him a text. I would still like to take our family to Glen Arbor for fishing. You mean with Mr. Kloosterman?
Yeah,
So in this whole time period, May, April, even into June of 2023, you're separated, the complaint for divorce has been filed, and you're still wanting to do stuff as a family.
I think it's always in the best interest of the kids to see that Kevin and I can co-parent well, that we can be a unit of 5 in the best capacity that we can. I think it's in the kids' best interest that we get along and can still do activities together. Absolutely.
Yet your testimony yesterday was that he's abusive to you and the children, and you don't feel safe and you feel threatened by him. Wouldn't you agree that all these text messages don't indicate that you're fearful of him in any way?
I am never fearful of him when we are out and about in public places with other people around. I have said that from the beginning. That's the truth. That's why I feel I've kept our family so busy for years, because it's what happens behind closed doors that nobody knows about.
I'm just reviewing my notes from yesterday. It was a very long testimony, so I may have a moment.
No problem.